Have you ever noticed a moment where your mood changes, but nothing actually happened? No argument, no bad news, no obvious reason? Just a quiet, emotional shift inside you. Most people ignore it. Some people feel confused by it. But a small percentage of people notice it instantly, and psychology has a very specific explanation for why. Here's the psychology behind the subtle emotional shift only highly self-aware people notice. They sense emotions before they turn into thoughts. Most people become aware of their emotions only after their mind starts explaining them. I'm irritated because of work. I'm sad because of what they said. Highly self-aware people feel the emotion earlier, before the story forms. They notice a tight chest, a drop in energy, a sudden heaviness. Psychology calls this high interoceptive awareness, the ability to detect internal emotional signals early. It's the difference between realizing you're stressed after snapping at someone versus sensing stress quietly building before you say anything at all. That early detection changes everything. They notice when their emotional baseline shifts. Here's something most people miss. Your mood isn't constant. It has a baseline, a default emotional temperature. Highly self-aware people notice when that baseline subtly moves. They feel slightly less motivated than usual, slightly more distant, slightly less excited by things they normally enjoy. Not enough to call it sadness, not enough to call it burnout, but enough to know something internal has changed. Psychologically, this is linked to emotional monitoring, a trait strongly associated with emotional intelligence. It's why some people catch emotional burnout early, while others only notice once they're already exhausted. They recognize emotions that don't have a clear cause. Most people are uncomfortable with emotions that don't make sense, so their brain rushes to assign blame, a person, a situation, a memory. Highly self-aware people do the opposite. They pause, they observe, they understand that emotions don't always come from the present moment. Sometimes they come from accumulated stress, unprocessed thoughts, delayed emotional reactions. Psychology refers to this as delayed affect, emotions that surface long after the triggering event. Highly self-aware people don't panic when this happens. They recognize the shift without forcing an explanation. They feel the difference between distraction and emotional avoidance. Here's a subtle one. Most people distract themselves without realizing why. Scrolling, binge-watching, staying busy. Highly self-aware people notice when distraction feels different, when it's not entertainment, but avoidance. They feel a slight internal resistance before doing something stimulating, a quiet discomfort they're trying to escape. This awareness is tied to metacognition, the ability to observe your own mental behavior. It's not about judging yourself. It's about noticing patterns without denial. That's why self-aware people often say, something feels off even when life looks fine on the outside. They sense emotional misalignment before it becomes a problem. The most powerful part of this emotional shift is what it signals: misalignment. Highly self-aware people notice when their actions stop matching their values, when they're saying yes too often, when they're living on autopilot, when they're disconnected from what actually matters to them. The emotional shift is subtle, but it's consistent. Psychology links this to value incongruence, a state that often leads to anxiety and dissatisfaction if ignored. Self-aware people don't always fix it immediately, but they notice it early, and that awareness alone reduces long-term emotional damage. So what's the real takeaway here? That quiet emotional shift isn't weakness. It isn't overthinking. It isn't being too sensitive. It's information. Highly self-aware people don't have fewer emotional changes. They just notice them sooner. And the earlier you notice an emotion, the more control you have over how it shapes your behavior, your relationships, and your life. If this resonated with you, it's probably because you've felt that shift before, and now you finally have words for it. If you want more psychology that makes you stop and think, subscribe, because understanding yourself is the most underrated skill there is.